Usually when we think about reality, we picture it like a giant empty room.
Right, just a big box.
Yeah, exactly. Just a massive passive container where, things just happen, like you drop a ball and it bounces, or you play a note and it rings out.
Hmm.
We tend to view the universe as just this big void waiting to be filled with these isolated events and objects. And, well, we define everything in that void by its own self-contained intrinsic properties.
Which makes sense. I mean, that's how we navigate the everyday world.
Right. But what if that completely natural everyday assumption is just totally backwards?
Yeah.
So in today's deep dive into this essay called A Single Note, we're going to look at why a really simple musical note proves that the physical universe is absolutely not a passive container. Instead, it's actually a structured active field of pre-existing relationships.
Yeah, it really is a fundamental shift in perspective.
Yeah.
Because we have this, this deeply ingrained habit of looking at things, whether it's an atom or a person or just a sound, and assuming that its identity comes entirely from within itself.
Like it's the main character of his own little universe.
Exactly. We think the object is the main character. But the framework we are exploring today, it argues that identity is, well, it's almost entirely relational. And this isn't just some, abstract philosophical exercise either.
Right.
It's a structural rule that governs the mechanics of literally everything. I mean, starting from the physics of a simple sound wave all the way up to, like, the geometric growth of the entire cosmos.
Okay, so I want to start right at the ground floor with that sound wave, because to understand how this scales up to the universe, we have to look at the essay's core thought experiment.
Yeah, the single note.
Right, it starts with a single musical note. Let's just say, it's in the middle C. By itself, this single note is entirely internally coherent. Like, it's a real physical event. It has a specific frequency, meaning the sound wave is vibrating at a set number of cycles per second. And it has a period, which is just the time it takes for one wave cycle to complete.
Right, it has phase, it has a measurable pitch.
Exactly, how high or low we perceive the sound to be.
Yeah.
It unfolds in time perfectly, pushing the air molecules around it. I mean, it is a complete physical entity.
Yeah, it is. You could hook a microphone up to an oscilloscope, right? And play that middle C, and you'd watch a perfectly continuous, mathematically flawless wave display right on the screen. It's structurally whole.
Okay, but here is where I want to push back a little bit, or at least, test the boundaries of this idea for you guys listening. Because the argument is that this internally coherent note has no relational identity.
Correct.
But if I have a note with a measurable pitch and a frequency I can actually see on a screen and a sound I can hear in the room, I mean, doesn't it already have an identity? If I can point to it and say, hey, that is a C, why do we argue that it lacks identity?
Well, because we have to separate what we measure as internal coherence from what we actually experience as identity or, meaning.
Okay, distinguish those for me.
Yeah. So, yes, the C note oscillates with perfect mathematical precision. But think about musical identity. Like, a tonic is essentially the home base of a scale, right? It's the note that makes a melody feel resolved and complete.
It feels like an ending.
Exactly. But our isolated C, sitting all by itself, it cannot be a tonic. It cannot be a dominant chord leading you back home. It cannot be considered dissonant, and it cannot be resolved.
Oh, I see. Right, because a single note can't be a home base if there's no, surrounding neighborhood of other notes to travel away from or return to.
Precisely.
And even a word like dissonant, I mean, that inherently implies that it's clashing with something else. Like, it takes two to clash.
Yeah, exactly. Those properties, they simply do not exist within the isolated note itself. You can dissect that 261 hertz frequency forever in a laboratory, and you will never find a conic hidden inside the sound wave.
Wow, yeah.
Those qualities, they only arise the moment a second note appears. So the overarching insight here is that what we consider to be the actual meaning or identity of the note, well, it isn't a property of the object itself.
Right.
The identity is a property of the space between the objects.
And what's really crucial mechanically here,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the essay makes a great point of this, is that when you play that second note, neither the first note nor the second note changes internally.
Right, they don't morph.
Yeah, like if I play a G alongside my C, the C doesn't alter its frequency to somehow accommodate the G. They remain completely independent physical vibrations.
Yeah.
Yet suddenly they both acquire this really rich relational meaning. The C becomes the tonic and the G becomes the perfect fifth.
Exactly. They acquire a shared context.
But okay, this raises a very mechanical question for me. If the relationship like the harmony, the dissonance, the actual interval itself, doesn't physically belong to the first note and doesn't physically belong to the second note, where does it come from?
Right.
Did those two sound waves just magically generate that relationship out of thin air the exact moment they intersected?
Well, the answer to that is a definitive no.
Okay.
They didn't invent the relationship at all. To explain why, there's this wonderfully simple analogy from the source material involving just an ordinary hoop, like a plastic hula hoop.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
So if you look at a hoop, it obviously has a center. Now, the center of that hoop, it doesn't need to be drawn with a marker, and it doesn't need to be physically occupied by an object in order to exist.
Right.
The exact location of the center is mathematically guaranteed by the geometry of the rim itself. The physical rim creates the rule that defines the center.
Okay, yeah, I follow that. I mean, all points on the circle are equidistant from that center, so the center has to exist logically, even if there's literally nothing there.
Exactly. So imagine you take that hoop and you toss it out onto a large grassy field. When it lands, it encloses a specific patch of grass, and right in the middle of that hoop is your center. Now, did the act of tossing the hoop create a center on the lawn?
Well, no, I mean, every single coordinate on that lawn already existed before you threw the hoop.
Right. You are not creating a center. You are revealing one. The field, in this case the lawn, already contained an infinite number of permissible centers. It's a continuous plane.
Yeah.
So by placing the hoop down, you simply selected one of them. You revealed a geometric reality that the field already allowed for. The structure of the relationship between the rim and the center was pre-existing.
Okay, let me map this directly back to our musical notes then.
Go for it.
So when I play that first C note, it acts as an anchor point, just like tossing down the hoop on the lawn. And then when I play the second note, the G, I am not forcing a brand new relationship into existence.
Right.
That G is merely occupying one of the available relational positions relative to my anchor note. The interval between them, like that specific mathematical ratio of frequencies, was already baked into the invisible geometry of the system.
Yes, beautifully put. And if we zoom out, this brings us to a massive takeaway for you regarding how reality is actually structured. The universe is not a neutral, empty stage where random things just bump into each other and invent rules on the fly.
Yeah.
It is a highly structured physical field that contains specific, pre-existing, allowable configurations. Events don't generate relationships out of nowhere. They simply occupy positions that the system's underlying geometry already permits.
The interval is revealed by the musicians, but it was constructed by the geometry of the universe.
Exactly.
Man, that reframes so much of how we view cause and effect.
Yeah.
But I feel like it also introduces a complication.
Okay, what's that?
Well, if the universe's field already contains all these permitted geometric configurations, does it just allow anything? Because, reality doesn't seem like total chaos. There's obvious order. So why do some structures or relationships stick around and build our world while others just instantly fall apart?
That's the perfect question. And to figure out why things fall apart or stay together, we actually have to imagine a universe where nothing interacts at all. We have to look at a limiting condition.
Okay.
Imagine a universe composed entirely of exactly one repeating note. Let's just stick with our C. Just one continuous tone, stretching on forever.
Oh man, like one of those avant-garde art exhibits that test how long you can stand in an empty room before losing your mind.
Yeah, exactly like that. And, well, from a strictly structural standpoint, that single note universe would actually be perfectly stable.
Really?
Yeah, it's persistent and independent, but it completely lacks relational contrast. Because there is only one note, there is zero tension, there are no intervals, and therefore there can be no resolution.
Right, there's nowhere to go.
Exactly. Structure would exist in this universe, certainly, but it wouldn't be expressible or navigable. Coherence alone isn't enough. You need relational contrast for any observable meaning or complexity to actually arise.
Okay, so meaning and complexity require a second element to enter the field. But when that second note finally appears, what determines if they, play nice together?
This is where we hit the crucial difference between what is permitted by the field and what is stable within it.
Okay.
When that second note appears, the field permits a whole range of configurations that were already geometrically available. The second note might occupy the position of a minor second, or a major third, a perfect fourth, a perfect fifth. The field mathematically allows all of these ratios to exist, but, and this is key, not all permitted configurations behave the same way.
This reminds me of playing with wooden building blocks as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like the physical shape of the blocks permits you to touch any two pieces together. You are fully allowed to take a giant triangular prism and try to balance it point down on top of a tiny sphere.
Sure.
The geometry of the room and the blocks absolutely permits you to perform that action. But just because you can put them together doesn't mean they will lock tight and stay there.
No, they won't.
Right? Gravity and the mass of the blocks dictate that the arrangement is highly unstable. It's going to fall over immediately.
That's a great mechanical analogy. And, well, the musical version of this involves harmonic ratios.
Okay.
If you couple a tonic with a perfect... So think of the really powerful, open, sturdy sound of the first two notes of the Star Wars theme. That arrangement is deeply stable. The physics of their waveforms align smoothly. They will tend to hold their configuration.
Makes sense.
But if you couple a tonic with a minor second, think of the tense, clashing, unnerving sound of the Jaws theme that generates immense structural tension.
Oh, yeah, you can literally feel that tension.
Right. The waveforms are constantly fighting each other, creating this beating effect. It intrinsically wants to shift or reconfigure to find resolution. Both the perfect fifth and the minor second are permitted by the universe, but they do not endure equally.
So, permissions may define what coupling is possible, but system stability determines what actually persists. The universe acts as a filter, constantly favoring configurations that reduce overall tension and maintain coherence.
Exactly.
But stability isn't just about the physical shape or the harmonic arrangement, is it? Because in the essay, there's a whole other layer to this involving time. Like, for any relationship to actually hold, the events have to occur within a specific time frame.
Yes, the concept of the coherence window. This is entirely about timing and density. Let's look at the mechanics of this because it's fascinating. When two are sounded simultaneously, there is a minimal silent gap.
Basically a gap of zero.
Right, exactly zero. Because they overlapped perfectly in time, that coupling is immediate, unmistakable, and structurally profound. The field registers that relational state instantly. The waves are literally interacting in the air.
But I don't have to play them at the exact same millisecond to establish a relationship. Like, I can play a C, wait half a second, and then play a G.
Right.
My ear and the physics of the sound in the room still connect them as a melody.
Correct. You can introduce time between them. The fascinating part is exploring the boundaries of that coherence window. Imagine playing the C and then slowly increasing the delay before playing the G. What you're doing is trying to find the boundary. You want two notes separated by the maximum silent gap while still maintaining relational coherence.
It's almost like a conversation. If I say hello and you reply hi a second later, we're clearly coupled in a relationship. We're interacting.
Yes.
But if I say hello and then you reply hi like 3 weeks later, the system doesn't recognize it as a conversation anymore. The coherence window has completely closed.
That is exactly how it works.
Yeah.
And from the perspective of the system, that boundary, that maximum silent gap, looks like infinity.
Wow. Infinity.
Yeah, to the structural integrity of the relationship, it is the absolute razor-thin edge of what the field can sustain. Up until that boundary, the events are coupled. But the moment you cross it, if the events are too widely separated in time, the coupling weakens and the relationship is completely lost.
Even if the ratio is right.
Exactly. Even if the underlying geometry technically permits the interval, the system's stability requirements dictate that the connection dissolves. The field stops recognizing them as a pair, and they revert right back to being isolated events.
Okay, I want to take this framework, the pre-existing geometries, the drive for stability, the coherence windows, and I want to move it out of the realm of sound.
Okay, let's scale it up.
Yeah, because if this is a universal rule of organization, we should see it dictate the behavior of actual physical matter, right?
We absolutely do. The mechanics we just described map seamlessly onto the physical sciences all the way down to the atomic level. Think about an isolated atom. On its own, sitting in a vacuum, a noble gas atom like neon is perfectly internally stable. Its electron shells are full.
It's just like our isolated continuous C note.
Precisely. It's internally coherent, but it's not interacting. But if we take a different atom, say sodium, and we look at its behavior, things get really interesting.
Okay, let's apply our rule.
Right. Its behavior is heavily influenced by its relational context. If you have a molecule, it can be completely inert in one environment, doing absolutely nothing. But if you move it into a new configuration, a new neighborhood, it can suddenly become highly reactive.
And we have to ask, like, what physically changed to make it reactive? Did the molecule suddenly invent a brand new property called reactivity?
Right. And the answer is no.
Its internal structure, Like the number of protons, the arrangement of its electrons, it remains exactly the same right up until the moment it bonds. Its behavior isn't some new intrinsic property it suddenly generated. Its role is entirely dictated by its physical position within the wider relational system.
Exactly. When it moves near another atom, it enters a new permitted relational state. The electrons of one atom begin to experience the electromagnetic pull of the protons in the other.
And the system's intrinsic drive for stability takes over.
Yes. If sharing an electron creating a chemical bond reduces the overall tension of the system and moves them both to a more stable energy state, they react. The system naturally moves toward a configuration that reduces tension.
So what we observe in a laboratory and label as, chemical behavior is really just matter occupying a permitted relational state. And the universe is just pushing it toward the most stable configuration available.
That makes perfect mechanical sense, doesn't it? We spend so much time looking at the actors on the stage, the atoms, the molecules, the notes, and we ignore the stage they are standing on.
Yeah, we don't realize the stage has trapdoors and tilted floors and grooves that are physically dictating where the actors are allowed to stand and how they're forced to move.
When stage is active, the feel has rules.
And, well, when we look at how this scales up from atoms to visible nature, we hit the ultimate example of this optimization, which is the golden ratio, or phi.
Eyes.
We see this exact mathematical proportion everywhere in nature. I mean, we see it in the way leaves grow in a spiral around a stem, in the chambers of a nautilus seashell, and even in the arms of massive spiral galaxies.
The golden ratio is the perfect case study for this framework, because often when people talk about phi, they mystify it.
Oh, totally.
They treat it like a magical blueprint or some hidden code that nature is somehow forced to follow. But if we look at it through the lens of stability and permitted relationships, we realize phi is not a mystical force being imposed from the outside.
Right. It's not like a sunflower or a seashell is doing complex calculus to figure out exactly where to place its next layer of seeds or calcium. It doesn't know what phi is.
No, it doesn't. Phi is simply a highly stable, permitted relational configuration. Let's look at the mechanics of why it happens. Think about a plant growing new leaves.
Okay, so if a plant grows a new leaf, it naturally needs to place it where it won't block the sun from the older leaves below it.
Right, it needs light.
The physical space available, like the geometry of the stem and the need for sunlight, it basically forces the plant to rotate its growth at a specific angle.
Yeah.
If it rotates too little, the leaves overlap and die. And if it rotates too much, the plant becomes unbalanced and falls over.
Exactly. The system is optimizing for stability under physical constraints. Processes that need to preserve their overall proportional form while they expand, like your plant, or a nautilus shell adding new chambers without changing its center of gravity, they have to follow certain geometric rules. As they grow, the ratio between successive elements naturally converges to the most stable value possible, which just happens to mathematically be phi.
So it isn't math forcing the plant to grow in a spiral. It's the physical path of least resistance. The plant naturally falls into the golden ratio because it's the most stable, permitted groove in the geometry of the physical universe.
That's it.
It's literally the tonic and the perfect fifth of proportional growth.
Yes, the spiral of the shell, the harmony of the musical interval, the sudden reactivity of a molecule, none of these are constructed from scratch out of thin air. They are all selected from a constrained set of permitted relationships.
Right.
The universe's field already sets the geometry, and the physical events occurring within it merely interact with that field to reveal what is available.
Man, this completely changes the paradigm.
Yeah.
I mean, just to recap for everyone, we started with a single musical note floating in a void, proving that coherence is kind of meaningless without context.
Right.
And then we learned that tossing a hoop on the ground doesn't manufacture a center, it just reveals one that Euclidean geometry already guaranteed.
Yes.
We explored how molecules switch from inert to reactive purely based on the tension of their neighborhood. And we saw how the majestic spirals of the golden ratio are really just the physical universe finding its most stable, balanced posture.
It's all connected.
The overriding lesson from a single note is that the empty passive container does not exist. The universe is a structured web, actively optimizing for stability, selecting from a menu of permitted relationships.
And, if we bring this all the way down to a personal level, it provides a profoundly different lens through which you can view the world and perhaps even your own place in it.
Oh, absolutely.
It encourages us to really re-examine our assumptions about identity, what we often treat as intrinsic, fixed properties, whether that's in nature, in physics, and maybe even in our own personalities or societal roles, might actually just be contextual.
Yeah, that's a big thought.
We are looking at permitted expressions within the specific constrained systems we happen to inhabit. A change in the system's structure often demands a change in the expression.
It really makes you rethink everything you consider fixed about yourself, which leads me to a final puzzle for you to mull over as you go about the rest of your day.
Let's hear it.
We have established today that this structured field already contains the geometry of all allowable configurations, our interactions, our movements, our discoveries. They merely reveal what the universe has already permitted to exist, rather than constructing something entirely new from scratch.
Right.
So here is the question. If all the possible intervals, ratios, and configurations are already there, waiting quietly in the field, does true novelty actually exist? When someone paints a masterpiece or engineers a revolutionary new technology, are they actually creating something unprecedented, or are we all just discovering the music that the universe has already